Well, I was going to see how long I could hold that pose.
I saw that. I saw that.
You know, I didn't want to shake things up too much, but we finally got here. We are in the after party, and thank you, Cynthia and Lois, for joining the party today.
Sure.
Always nice to have our guests with us.
Sure.
Yeah.
Happy to be here again.
So I want to kind of kick a few things off. We had several people kind of chime in and correct some things. It was mid-February, around Valentine's Day weekend, that you attended because John was in the same class. And guess what? So was this guy. I was there. I was sitting in the back being all quiet, but I was there soaking it in as always.
I think Eddie was there too, wasn't he? I think I was there. And
Yeah.
That
was amazing. Right. That was one of those classes where it's like everything aligned, and it was a great class.
Yeah.
Second to the last class before we had to go virtual.
Yep. Yes. Absolutely. So, Cindy and Lois, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, you know, a lot of people hear kind of this story and they're like, man, I see how you've made the transition over to the paper side of the business, right? The note side of the business. Mm-hmm. And you've obviously had tremendous success. And for some people, it is one of those things when they hear, oh my gosh, you bought 10, 20, 30 notes in a year. That just sounds like, oh, I can't do it. So what I wanted to ask you is a little bit about your learning curve and what that was like. If you could share kind of with some of the people today, what that journey was kind of like to ultimately end up clicking that button. I know it's not much work, but it takes some confidence. It takes, a little bit of bravery to make it happen. So share a little bit about your learning curve.
You know, we told you in the call that Lois's nephew had introduced us to Notes.
Right.
It wasn't in January. It was prior to that. So we started doing a general research on Notes and NoteSchool. And so we had done some preliminary work before we actually showed up in a class. So we didn't, because neither one of us like to walk in just completely with blank slate of information. So we did some preliminary research. And then I can't even say it more, we just saturated ourselves. Instead of strapping on the tool belt nights and weekends, we did notes. Perfect. So we just flipped what we did, and we literally saturated ourselves for about 5 months in notes, note knowledge, let me say that. So that when we got there at the point of getting ready to click, we had done, at the time, we thought we had done a lot and sufficient amount of learning. But Lois, you might have a different thought about that. But
yeah, I think honestly, at our age, we can't make a mistake. So we wanted to make sure that if we were putting money in something, that it was what we thought was going to happen, that we were going to be able to make money, and that it was going to be secure. I mean, very honestly, I think that's something that people need to know, because there can be a lot of real estate experts out there that can, take your money or, and scam you, honestly. And so we wanted to make sure that that we researched the entire NoteSchool, Notes Direct, Eddie. We looked Eddie up, and because it was important for us. We didn't have time to make a huge mistake at mid-60s and recover. So that was part of what we did too, to make sure that we felt that this was legitimate, and that it was something that we could do and achieve the goals that we had.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting is, in today's technology world, as someone who's been around for 40 years in the business, done 50,000 deals, you can't really hide, right? that research was a little bit easier. But now, our current audience who's even watching this show, you've got a little bit of a leg up, because there was no NoteSchool TV back then. It's not like we were pumping out content on YouTube. And so you're getting a lot more information right out of the gate to help you feel a little bit more comfortable about what that looks like to move forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was thinking when you guys were saying that, when we launched NoteSchool TV, we really did that thinking that we could communicate stories or situations or people's stories to an audience. And if you guys would have had that advantage, you would have really escalated your, you could have watched some YouTube stuff and really, you know, in 2 or 3 nights, honestly, you could have gotten yourself way up the ladder, prepared for the class, because you would have started becoming prepared for it. That's the case. And of knowing that, hey, we want to go do this. And one thing I was thinking about, and we've talked about this obviously before, and that is that you didn't really feel like your rental properties were making you a lot of money.
No, we had, we didn't just buy rental properties for the sake of rental properties. We really were buying them in areas that we thought had appreciation. So I know, Eddie, you're not a C and D asset buyer. We just couldn't at the time, because of some financial distress we had in our 40s and 50s. We couldn't buy C and B class properties. We had to buy C minus and D plus properties in areas that we felt, with a lot of research, that we felt like was going to accumulate. So we bought them near universities. We bought them in trending neighborhoods. That has paid off for us, but we just couldn't do the volume to make it, the purchase of property worth it.
Well, and let me say this, like, I understand the ability to buy cheaper because you're buying in a lesser quality neighborhood, more of a blighted neighborhood, right?
Right.
I would say, let me say this though, Cindy, if you knew all you knew now about financial modeling, you might have bought a better grade of a house in a different way.
Definitely.
So people would, most real estate investors are sort of taught, the only way you're going to buy cheap is you got to buy junk. Right.
Exactly. That's how we thought.
And that's sort of a mindset. And I'm sort of trying to break that mindset, because you now can look and smile and say, he's absolutely right. There's another way to do this that we just didn't know.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure. Well, and just the financing part of it is very difficult to, you know, you can't get financing. So all of the money going into it was our own, or we thought we couldn't get financing. And so we have learned a lot that would have helped us over the last, 10 years, but that's okay. We're learning it now.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why we like having you on is, and it's my story, right? Because I've been doing this 40 years. I mean, if you tried to count all my mistakes, you couldn't. I've made more mistakes than anybody in the business has ever thought about. But I think all of us now, you know, Brian's not of our age. He's in a different generation. And Brian, we're just trying to help you not make those mistakes. Like, fast forward to the right answer, right?
Right.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, you guys told me a story the other day. And so you had one of your performing notes, right? Because everybody's like, well, oh, they're talking about all the good stuff, right? And everything's perfect. So you had one of your performing notes become non-performing. And, you know, you said, well, you know, the sellers just gave you the deed back. And then what'd you do?
Well, so we brought it to one of the weekday calls and said, okay, we've got this. And so, Eddie, you gave us some really good advice, you know, deed in lieu, which we had already learned about previously. But you said, and then, you know, you said, don't hire a realtor, put on Facebook Marketplace. And we both looked at each other and it's like, he's crazy. And we're like, okay, you know, he's been right so far. So we had 168 people that responded and showed interest in this little crappy house. And we ended up selling it to a family. This is their first home they've ever owned. They have 3 kids, and we're going to, we owner financed it on 4 years because it was a little house, and we will end up making like 75% profit. And yet we have this little family in there, and we only bought it last October, I think. So, I mean, this was a really quick fail and turnaround and win.
Yeah, and what's interesting is they buy that house and now it's their home and they can have home ownership. Right. And the things that needed fixing in that house, they're happy to do because now they have ownership and they're not a tenant.
Right? Yep, that's exactly. I mean, the story is great because they we could give it to them at a price point that made us happy. It made them happy. They're going to have a legacy for their kids. I mean, it's a feel-good story and a financially good story.
Well, and here's the thing with the folks that they just said, hey, we can't do this any longer, and a deed in lieu simply means they just surrendered the property to you, right? And so you help them, because I've owned properties before that I couldn't, when you can't sell it, get out of a property, you're like, right? So you help them. And by the way, was that property in Houston or was it somewhere else?
Ohio, Akron, Ohio.
Okay, so it was a
long way from where you live, right?
Yeah, very long drive.
But you never went there, right?
Not once.
And here's a question I have that a lot of people, I think, miss at the beginning is you had a performing asset. You were getting a return on your investment. You had a solid yield. And then they stopped paying.
Oh, yeah, it was performing for 1 or 2 months.
But you bought it thinking these people are going to pay. And then they stopped paying. And it seems like this is going to be a horrible thing. Did your return on investment go up or did it go down when you ended up getting this property back and reselling it?
It went
Exponentially
way
up.
up. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the beautiful thing people don't understand, that when things go wrong for the bank, typically things get better for the bank. You know what I mean? And this it's just such a powerful piece that, you need to be compensated. You need to be rewarded for having that knowledge. And ultimately, you were able to, like Joe said, you were able to help the person who lived in the house move on to this next chapter. But then you gave somebody a second chance of home ownership. And now they were able to buy a home when, the banks were kind of looking at them like, we don't really want to work with you. Right?
Well, and it's funny because we first thought that we were going to, do this good deed for the person in the house that couldn't make the loan or the mortgage payment anymore. And so we were going to, do an amendment to the loan. And we were, so we had all this in our mind that we were going to help them fix it. And he goes, no, he says, I'm moving in with my sister. He said, I have health problems and I can't do it. And we went, oh, okay, well.
You had a real estate problem and you were a lender that could solve it.
That's right.
Yes.
One question before we jump off. A guy, I know this guy, Tim. He lives in Houston, and he says, "So why aren't you doing this on your rental?" So talk about that just for a second.
Oh,
why aren't you converting your rentals into seller financing?
We are. We are. In fact, we have. I think 5 or 6 of our properties. We have approximately 15 properties, and about 5 or 6 of those we are in the process of selling those, and we're going to hold as many of those notes as we can. We think 2 to 3, but we don't know until it's all said and done. So we are absolutely in the midst of doing this. And we will continue to do it. Our objective is to invest in performing and non-performing notes. Will we always have a couple of rental properties? Probably, for various reasons.
Yeah.
All right, just a rough number. Take the income on a house when you were renting it, and take the income on the house when you've now owner financed it. Any difference?
Yes, right. Several hundredfold.
Yeah, I think if you take all the repairs and the taxes and all the stuff out, we might have made in some of our properties a couple $100 a month, maybe. And the mortgage payments that we're getting on these are probably anywhere, honestly, from about $800 to $1,600 a month, depending upon the size of the property.
Right.
That is a different amount of money.
It is.
And no more money going back in.
Yeah,
exactly. I think I'm liking this bank thing.
Yeah. One of those phone calls, gee, my toilet's running.
Yeah.